Hi, I'm going to do a video perspective drawing related of a couch made out of wood blocks. I am going to first imagine a box structure form. I'm going to start with that doesn't include the back, this piece right here. So that would be something like that, but that's getting kind of messy. And in particular, I want to start off with this first one with understanding some construction line stuff. There's a lot of things going on here, and there's some ways to help really understand where these points should fall on this edge. In perspective, that's tricky to just eyeball. So to demonstrate that, first I'm going to talk about how to do it not in perspective. And so what I'm going to do is just create a rectangle that I'm just sort of imagining is what the bottom underside of the sofa couch would look like. Just from, well, I don't know, maybe from the bottom up. Either way, I want to make sure I understand accurately how to place this point. And when it's not in perspective, that's probably not a brand new concept to you. But what I'm just going to do is crisscross my diagonal lines. And where they cross is where the middle is. So I'll extend a line from there. And if this edge is what this edge is, then when it's not in perspective, it would be like that, which is just in the middle, which is really not that hard to get. But when I want to understand the width of the couch arms, the width of this, and to make sure that it makes sense with this width, and that they are accurate with each other in the rules of perspective, it helps to understand this little concept, which might be familiar to you or may not. But what I'm going to do is I want to decide what distance I want this, what width I want that, and to transfer that width over to here is something I could just eyeball when it's not in perspective. But it's tricky when it is in perspective. It involves using these diagonals as well as using extended lines going in directions that I know. And for this, I know that they're all the side-to-sides are exactly side-to-side. All the up-downs are exactly up and down. So I made that sketched up to where it intersected with this diagonal. And then I'm going to go in the direction, extend a line in the direction I know until I run into the opposite diagonal. And then I'm going to drop back down an up-down line. So now, if I've been somewhat careful, I know that this distance is the same as this distance, and that is in the middle. So if the blocks were something like that, these are the arm blocks, and then the cushion couch bottom block. Anyways, I will. That is an important skill to be able to understand perspective drawing wise. How I'm going to demonstrate that for how it would work in the couch is a little bit trickier because I would need a little bit bigger paper, but I want to make sure that the concept makes sense. And what I'm going to do is set up sort of a traditional little perspective setup that I'm going to identify a vanishing point there and a vanishing point here. I'm going to say that I'm going to create that the ground rectangle in this little setup, and I'm going to do it so it's not too big, because the bigger the size of it relative to my little setup, the bigger it is, the more exaggerated and distorted it will be. But I don't have a giant piece of paper, and so we'll see what happens here. It's probably going to be fairly distorted, but that might be kind of fun. Crazy angles and stuff. So hopefully what I'm doing right here isn't brand new to you. It may be. If so, I apologize, and I'm assuming I have other videos explaining this. But if I wanted to have this as the bottom plane, the bottom rectangle of my couch, remember what I did first to make sure I could find the center, an accurate center. I'm going to do the crisscross. And then in this case, I think I may have said I'm using the direction I know of these lines, so I know which way to go. And for this perspective setup, the direction is guided by my vanishing points and setup. So, oops, I want to find the center of the front of the couch. So that would be about there, and you can see that this is following the rules of this little setup, but it's obviously a lot more skewed and distorted, which once again, I'm not sure if it's fun or is really annoying. Either way, so that's this one. Now I want to figure out how I would do something like these guys. So in a similar fashion, I'm going to say, you know, I've looked at this and I like this width. I like that sort of distance from there to there for this part of the drawing. And I could eyeball it to see what it was over here, but I want to use perspective to help me know that it's fairly accurate. So what I'm going to do is take this guide in the direction that I know it's going this way, which in my first example was straight up and down, but now it's to that vanishing point. When it runs into this diagonal, I'm going to switch direction to the other vanishing point. This is the other direction that I know. I'm going to mark where it crosses over. And now I'm going to extend. I want to know this line in the, once again, the direction that I know. So that would fall about there. So this is the kind of thing, depending on how exaggerated, it would be really tricky to know that that's the middle of the drawing that you set up, and this was this, you know, technically the same as that. But that's a great way to set it up. I'm going to try to see if I can do something that would be a little bit more similar to the actual drawing. But I'm going to do it in a way that's very just sort of eyeballing things. And you've probably quickly realized the inherent catch-22 in perspective drawing. When you're approaching things and you're trying to figure out what angles things should be going in, the response is, oh, you just have to figure out the horizon line and the vanishing points, and that tells you all the angles, and you're all set. And then you say, oh, okay, how do I find the horizon line and the vanishing points? And then usually there's some sort of response, well, you just have, you just draw the angles. So there, it's just back and forth. And I have ways of dealing with that, but that's a different video. So I'm just kind of sketching this in, which I think is fairly accurate. And it's fine for demonstration purposes. So if it was something like that, and I made sure that these angles these edges were converging accurately, and these were as well. It's a big if. But then I'm going to do my the crisscross to find the center, and pretty quickly we're going to also realize another challenge when we don't really have the horizon line and the vanishing points, is that I want to angle this one, find the point that the vanishing point would go through, and extend it to here, but I don't know where that vanishing point is. So what I'm going to do is estimate an eyeball. I'm going to take this angle and this angle, and I'm going to try to take the average of those going through the midpoint. And then I'm going to extend that. And try to do it accurately. That is probably not perfect in a not perfect setup, but when I sort of just judge it, it does seem like it's shifting in a way that makes sense. And that this angle, the angle of this, is between this one and this one. And I'm just sort of thinking of them all heading in a similar direction towards the vanishing point out there. So that tells me this point, this center point of the blocks. For this one, I'll say that the distance of the arm, bottom of the arm block, is about that wide. So once again, I want to go in the direction that I know, but I don't really know it. But I can guesstimate it pretty well. It needs to be in between this, and that's not quite it. It's about there. And in a similar fashion, I'm eyeballing it, this line, going in a direction that is making sense with this one and this one. I suppose I could have sketched this one in. That would help. And where it hits that one, I'm gonna come back in this direction. It would be going off to that vanishing point. So that's a decent amount of sort of angle guessing. And like I say, there's ways of helping get these sort of more accurate without getting too crazy with finding vanishing points way off the paper. And I'll talk a little bit more about those in a different video. But that's the idea for how I might think of finding this middle point and finding this distance and making sure it's accurate with this distance in this perspective world that I've set up. So the arms would be something more like that. You know, I don't want to get into that because that takes us into new angles, which is what I'm going to be talking about. How to track down, how to identify which direction angles should go, even without the vanishing points. But check that out. Do a small version where you can sort of have the vanishing points, and then see if you can eyeball it without depending on the vanishing points. And just practice